It needs to be redone. Nobody's redone it. I'm not going to argue with the American Heart Association, but I will tell you there are positive benefits to some of the fat in your beef. Now, in a cow, there's 4 types of fat. There's external fat or subcutaneous fat. That's, if you look at your steak, that's the fat on the edge of your steak. Tastes great, but that's saturated fat, and that is not the best for you. Although, again, there's studies that say in small amounts, with moderation, it actually has some benefits for you. There's also an internal fat. That's just the fat around the organ. That's kind of like this. The fat around the organs and just deposits of fat. Don't eat that. Okay, that should be thrown away. Unfortunately, some of that fat does make it into processed foods, your lunch meats and so on. But your butcher won't have internal fat. There's also a connective fat that connects the different muscle groups. That typically is discarded as well. Okay, and then there's the best of all fats, the internal marbling fat. Okay, that's if you look at your steak, the white marks inside your steak, not on the outer edge, but the little white flecks. Okay, that is where your flavor comes from in your steak. That's where your tenderness and your juiciness comes from in your steak. The more of that, the more tender and juicy your steak will be. Okay. The good news is that's the good fat. That fat carries with it the good cholesterol. There's the HDLs are bad, and there's the LDL. The good cholesterol is found in that fat. Okay. Again, everything in moderation. I'm not telling you go eat beef every meal of the day, but that's in there. It's some of the, well, beef fat, that internal marbling fat, also has omega-3s and omega-6s in it. Those are good for brain health, immune system, very good things. So not all fat is equal, not all fat is bad. Now, within cattle, depending on the breed, you can focus on certain aspects of your fat, which fat is going to happen or produce better. I raise Wagyu beef, so I'm going to talk about Wagyu beef. Coincidentally, they have the most internal marbling that you're going to have in a beef that's available here. The next closest is the Hanu beef out of South Korea. Wagyu beef, I don't know if everybody's familiar with Wagyu. It's a breed of cattle. The more common term that you'll hear is Kobe beef. Has anybody had Kobe beef? Several people are nodding, and I'll bet you're wrong. Okay? And the reason for that is Kobe is a Wagyu, but Kobe is a beef that comes from Kobe, Japan. It's a Wagyu cow, but it has to come from Kobe, Japan. It became very popular, and that's the one everybody talked about. They massage the cows, they feed them beer. That's largely myth. But to actually be named Kobe properly, it has to be imported from Kobe, Japan. It's like saying I had Ohio Angus. If you got it in Missouri and it wasn't raised in Ohio, somebody's lying to you. You got a Missouri Angus, okay? And that's the same thing here. But because it became so popular, I'm sorry, this is echoing, people started using the name Kobe. The proper name is Wagyu. And Wagyu is divided up in Japan into 7 different strains of cattle, okay? Excuse me. In America, we exported or imported from Japan 204 cows and 4 bulls. That started in 1975 and made it till 1997. Okay? In 1997, Japan said no more Wagyu cattle get exported. They're a national treasure. We're not letting anybody have them. So you can no longer buy a live cow from Japan. You can't buy cattle semen, and you can't buy cattle embryos. The only thing you can buy from Japan is beef. You can buy a whole carcass. Last I checked, the carcass was about $18,000 plus shipping. Or you can buy steaks. Okay. Now the other one out there is you'll see a lot of places claim to have A5 Japanese steaks. If it really is, that's the premier of the premier. That's the best it gets. Less than 0.5% of Wagyu cattle will grade out as A5. If somebody here, like if I told you I'm raising A5, I'm lying. Okay? I can't raise A5. I can raise something that looks like it, acts like it, but nobody here can grade it as A5. In America, we don't grade that way. So there is no A5 American raised Wagyu cattle. Okay, restaurants is your best shot to get that. Costco, shockingly, has Japanese A5, and that's legit. Okay, they are actually flying it over and cutting it up here. Okay, so when we go back to fat, what we look for, and my PowerPoint's not working, so I've got some handouts I can have passed around, but I'll get you guys a picture of this. The bottom picture shows both types of good fat. The saturated, which is not the best, but it still provides some health benefits. That's the edge fat or external fat. And all these white marks that you'll see in the handouts are the internal marbled fat. That's what we talk about. The top picture is just the steak cooked, and you can still see the external fat. Internal fat, especially Wagyu, will melt. As you cook it, it's got a very low melting point. Wagyu starts melting at about 95 degrees. Okay? So if you buy Wagyu steak and you're going to grill it, get your grill nice and hot, don't throw the steak on and go get a beer because your grill will be on fire. Okay? That fat comes out fast, and it's very flammable. I've done it. So again, there's benefits to it. You want to focus on, if you're looking for good fat, find steaks with more marbling. And it's not just Wagyu. You can go to your butcher and look for the ones with the white in them. Okay, gonna cost you a little bit more. In America, it'd be graded as prime. That's as good as we go. You can get sometimes a prime plus, but that's our system. Okay, there is no A5, as I said earlier. Okay. Now, again, back to the Wagyu. When these were imported, the main reason they stopped exporting them or letting us import them is because we Americanized them. Okay. In Japan, their bloodlines will go back hundreds of years, 700-800 years. They can trace this cow and tell you its entire lineage, and it's pure. And they have strains. They have a shorthorn, they have a red Wagyu, they have black Wagyu, and within the black they have a couple different versions of it. And they have a really rare one that eats only olive leaves or olive hulls, which is supposed to be phenomenal, but I've never seen it, never tasted it. I imagine it's going to be very expensive. Okay, so when we got them over here, as Americans, we said, well, we can make these better. So we started doing things that the Japanese didn't approve. For example, we imported, of the 4 bulls, 2 were red bulls and 2 were black bulls. And we said, the reds are bigger, they have a bigger frame than the blacks have better marbling. So we said, what if we mix a red and a black? So now we have created a red-black Wagyu cow. That really offended them. We also started crossing them with other cattle. We cross them a lot with Angus, cross them with other breeds, some Simmental, Charolais, different ones. Again, with the theory, we want more meat. Wagyu are a much smaller cow. They're finer boned. You don't hang the meat on them that you do. You can get them to 1,500 pounds, but it's some work to get them there. It takes a lot longer. One of the reasons Wagyu beef is a lot more expensive is from birth to butcher. You're looking on a full blood about 34 months, up to 36 months. If you compare that to an Angus, you're looking 16 to 18 months. Okay? If you do a crossbred Wagyu, it's about 26 months on females. Males are 28 to 30 months. You can save a little bit by crossing them. You do get a bigger cow if you cross them. You get more meat, more rib to them. You give up a little bit of marbling, but a crossbred, a half-blood Wagyu marbles up way more than any European cow, any Angus, Charolais, any of that stuff. Okay, so you still get those benefits. But that's part of your reason for prices, is because of the length of time that you have the cow before it can be marketed, processed. Okay, back to the fats for a second. As I said, the internal fat has omega-3s. If we look at a Wagyu per serving, ounce per ounce, you get more omega-3s out of eating Wagyu than you do out of fish. Everybody talks about going and buying your fish oil and eating fish to gain those. You can get more out of the same size of a Wagyu. 3 ounces of Wagyu is more omega-3s than 3 ounces of fish. Okay. There's also omega-6. There's good cholesterol in it. Really, on the internal fat, there's no downside. I will tell you on eating a Wagyu, if you're a guy that says, I can eat a 24-ounce steak, you will not eat a 24-ounce Wagyu steak. Okay? They're just so rich and so filling, you cannot do it. I'm going to challenge you. You look like a guy who can eat a big steak. Come and see me afterward. Okay. Yeah, 6 ounces is a lot for a Wagyu. Yeah. But it tasted good, I bet you. Yeah, it's kind of a buttery flavor. It's really soft, really tender. You can, everybody talks about I can cut my filet mignon with a fork. Ribeyes, a Wagyu ribeye is as tender, if not more tender, than an Angus filet. Okay, an Angus filet is just crazy. I mean, it's like, I can't describe it. It's just so soft, so flavorful, so tender. Okay. Sorry, I wish I had my PowerPoint. It wouldn't jump around on you so much. So, I guess the first thing is the myth is that fat is bad. Not all fat is bad. Again, moderation, but there is good benefits to fat. There's protein in fat. Again, we've talked about some of the good cholesterol. There's also a lot of vitamins in the beef fat. When you talk about hamburger, it does matter. You do not want to get, if we stick with Wagyu, you don't want to get a 80-20 Wagyu. Okay, you're going to have a lot of fat in there, and it's going to shrink up. It's going to taste great, but you're going to shrink. In going to the grocery store, any other kind of beef, hamburger is scraps. Okay, that's what they're making hamburger out of. So for filler, when they're reducing you from a 90% lean down to an 80, or as you see in the grocery store, 65s now, they're adding fat. And what they're adding, they can't get the good fat, the internal fat, because they're not cutting up the steak for the hamburger. So they're using the subcutaneous or the saturated fat. And you want to be careful. Again, saturated fat, I'm not telling you it's not bad, but you don't want to overdo it with saturated fat. So watch out on the hamburgers. I would not recommend 60 and 70% lean. 80 is about as low as I would want to go. Ours, we try and keep at 90, which is a little difficult with Wagyu because of the fat. But we don't put any subcutaneous fat in it, just what's coming off the scraps. Nothing extras added that way. Yes? Well, ideally, you make it from the better cuts, okay? The best tallow is going to come from a fillet or a tender one, okay? The problem on that is a tenderloin in a cow isn't very big, which again, to go back to price, that's why you pay so much when you order filet mignon. There's not very many of them in a cow, okay? If you take a 1,500-pound cow, when you butcher that cow, your hanging weight is going to be about 60% of the live weight. So you got 900 pounds hanging. Take your 1,500-pound cow out in, they cut it and put it on the rail. You got about 900 pounds hanging there. When you process it further, you're going to lose another 30 to 35% because of bones, shrinkage, that kind of stuff. Okay? So back to your question on tallow, if you're going to make, well, let me finish, I guess. Out of that, so if we take our 900 pounds of hanging weight and we drop it down, if you dry age it, you're going to lose more because of shrinkage and water loss. So we'll say 60% of that. So you're down to 720 pounds of meat, right? I think. No, 630 pounds, do my math right. Of that 630 pounds, a little over half of it's going to be hamburger. Okay? You're going to have about 100 pounds of steak, 125 pounds of steak maybe. Of that steak, you're going to have at most 10 pounds of filet or tenderloin. Okay? So, but that's the best fat. If you want to make premium tallow And if you want to buy premium tallow, look for tenderloin tallow. Okay. Next would be using your rib steaks or your ribeyes, and that's got a lot more fat in it. It'll be cheaper for your tallow. Okay. I would not use the subcutaneous, some of the other fats in the tallow. Okay. Most butchers are not doing that at this point, although it's getting wildly popular. Tallow is, and I read an article that it's one of the fast food restaurants. I don't think it was McDonald's. Somebody who's going to go Steak and Shake is going back to tallow for their French fries. Okay. What it's really good for, that I've done, is for frying vegetables, potatoes in particular. It's phenomenal. There is probably the biggest marketer of what they call American Wagyu, which is half Wagyu, half English cattle. Okay. European, typically Angus or an Angus cross. That one is Snake River Farms, and they sell what they call Chef's Gold. If you want to try something, it's not cheap, but they make a butter out of the fat from the tenderloin. Okay, and they don't render it down. They take that fat and shape it. They compress it down and make basically a stick of butter. I think it's 8 ounces is like $20-some though, plus shipping. But they say that you cut a slice of that, put it on your steak or put it in your potatoes, and you'll think you're in heaven. Right? The upper end restaurants, the high steak restaurants, will use that same type of to finish your steak. Okay? Anybody else on that? Okay, let me get back to where. Okay, I think I said this already, but the clinical studies that have come out here recently, and there's about 6 of them in America, all at universities, but that they're indicating highly marbled beef does not increase LDL, the bad cholesterol. And in fact, in some of the studies, they're showing a reduction. Okay, the problem on all these studies is I can find one that'll say what I wanted to say. You can find one that says mine is wrong. Okay, but so you got to decide what you believe. The American Heart Association has agreed that they need to go back and re-examine some of the criteria in the studies. They were relying on 4 particular studies, and they've agreed that there's flaws in those, and that the connection isn't as solid as when they announced it in the 1970s. When we talk about it, and I've kind of skipped over, there's the saturated fat is the edge fat, the external fat. The good fat are the mono unsaturated and the poly unsaturated. That's what we're talking with the internal marble. And that's where, when we say good fat, that's where those health benefits come from and can be derived out of eating that fat. Anybody have questions so far on anything? Okay.
I got one.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the length of time to finish one out. Do you have any research on feed conversion?
Yeah, it's very similar. It is similar to what a regular cow would be. They're just a very slow growing, but they don't eat nearly as much either. Okay. I used to raise a lot of show cattle. You're talking about poor feed conversion, but when you take an Angus cow, and I raised a lot of the mothers were Angus or Simmentals, and the consumption is about 40% less for a Wagyu. When they're born, a Wagyu calf is about 40 to 45 pounds, and they grow very slow. At weaning, you're in the 350 to 450 range. Again, compare that to an Angus, you're 6 plus. If you got a good cow, you might be 700 pounds. So you're behind the whole time on that. The big thing, if you're going to raise Wagyu, is get on a very good mineral program, right? And you need to start them earlier than you would start your Angus or your dairy cows. They need to start early on creep feed and a mineral program.